Good morning. Thank you for braving the mist or the rain or the fluctuation between mist and rain. I'm looking forward to the 36 hours of fall weather that we'll be getting, I guess, tonight and into Monday before it goes back into the 80s for Thanksgiving. One of the things that Pastor Doug has done in the past on his Thanksgiving sermons is he's talked about some unique or some odd things that he's thankful for that you don't necessarily always think about. And so I decided I would steal that from him and talk a little bit about that to kind of open up when we think about Thanksgiving and talk about getting to spend time with family and reflect on things we're thankful for. The first thing that came to my mind was car people, because I'm not a car person, and my battery died the other day and I was able to get to Advanced Auto Parts, and I went in like a 4-year-old might go into a parent, and I'm like, it worked yesterday, it doesn't work today. Do you have anything you can plug in or snap on or swap out and make it where I can continue to go to work? Because I can't go to work right now. So hopefully they didn't take advantage of me, but they put a big block in there and did some wires, and my car worked, and so I was happy about that. So car people, if you're a car person, I'm thankful for you. Number 2, vacuum cleaners. I am moderately OCD, which if an OCD person ever says moderately OCD, that that means severely. And I really like the lines that a vacuum cleaner gives. And I really like to start at the farthest point and vacuum out of a room so that everything is exactly perfect and symmetrical. And also I hate sweeping. So vacuum cleaners are a twofer there. Kettle cooked potato chips. I like chips in general. Something about the kettle cook, the extra crunch. I like crunchy things. If there's leaves, I will look like a 4-year-old again and step on them and crunch on them and everything like that. Fingernail clippers. I sometimes, like on the side of my nails, I'll get agitated and pick at them or something like that, but I just think about what the world would be like if we didn't have fingernail clippers and we'd all be walking around and like using scissors or something to cut them or bite them, and it's not a good sight. Coffee. And also, this is a little bit like first world things, but Starbucks app has an online order option, so you don't have to wait in line. You just show up and your coffee is right there waiting on you. Doesn't work as well if you have like an order that takes 35 seconds to explain to the barista about what you want, but I just get a venti pikes with room, and so not having to wait in line is a benefit. Handheld or those collapsible umbrellas. It fits really nicely into my bag, and I see people walking around with gigantic umbrellas, and then I look at my little umbrella, and I'm really thankful because I carry around enough stuff at work as it is without having to also carry around an umbrella that's 3/4 my size. And then digital cameras. I was trying to think back, like the very first camera that I got, and I'm sure some people in here had an older one than this, but it was like a black rectangle, and you took a set of flashes and snapped it into the top, and you had like 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever it was flashes, and you had no idea if your pictures were going to be any good or not. And I am married to a wonderful woman who closes her eyes 75% of the time when a camera is on. So I can only imagine that if that were still the case, I would be showing a lot of pictures with eyes closed. But digital cameras, you can kind of pop it and do it like that. Delete all the ones where it's like half closed, completely closed, half open, now back open, and now we're good to go, and we can pick out the exact pictures that we want. So I had this great idea in my head when I knew that I was going to be preaching this week for Thanksgiving, and I was going to talk about Ruth and Naomi and their Thanksgiving and everything like that. And so I called Pastor Doug yesterday to get clarification on one thing, and he goes, "Oh, you're talking about Ruth? That's what I've been talking about on Wednesday nights for the last few weeks." Okay, so I'll make sure I take back some of all the background I was going to give you and everything like that, because some of you have already got some of that if you're there on Wednesday nights. But I'll give you enough to give you some context for the story. But we're going to be looking in the book of Ruth, and I'll kind of give you some different summaries, because we're not actually going to get through all 4 chapters today. But we're going to be talking about Naomi and Ruth. Ruth, obviously, who the book and the story is about, but some information on Naomi. Naomi was an Israelite who left to go to the country of Moab. She left with her husband and with her 2 sons. When she left, it was due to a famine, and she went into Moab, which was on the other side of the Dead Sea, give or take 50 miles away, because there was more food and the famine was not significant there, or at least not enough that it prevented people from going and still being able to survive and thrive. In 10 years in Moab, both her sons got married. She lost her husband, and she lost both her sons. So when I think about Thanksgiving, you know, Gary said one of the things that Pastor Doug talks about, Thanksgiving is about family. And so I know that when we have experienced a loss in our family, Thanksgiving is just a little bit different. We might look at the empty chair. We might think about the person who has been with us the past few years, or the person's house that we used to go to who is no longer with us. And Thanksgiving can kind of be a painful or a reflecting time as well. So I think about Naomi, and I think about the fact that in 10 years, she lost a spouse and she lost 2 sons, which were her only offspring. So anyone that was her blood kin died in 10 years. And I think about what it's like if I've lost someone close. You guys think about what you've gone through if you've lost a spouse or if you've lost a child, and the amount of pain and grief that you experience. I was reading about grief this week, because I think that even when I hear the word grief, it's a very significant word. It's something that almost gives you a response viscerally when you hear that word. You go through pain, you go through hard times, but when someone says, I'm grieving, it's almost a little bit different. And so this is from Dr. Elizabeth Neild. She wrote a book called 7 Choices, Finding Daylight After Loss Shatters Your World. Grieving is hard work, and it takes a huge toll on our bodies. When we are responding to a loss, the part of our brain where responses are integrated increases the production of CRH, which is a hormone that produces anxiety-like symptoms. As our stress increases, these chemical levels increase, and our central nervous system becomes highly stimulated. Our breathing can become defective. Biological rhythms of sleeping and eating are disturbed. Our digestion, metabolism, circulation, and respiration change, and our ability to concentrate and pay attention decreases. Often the physical stress of grieving will cause us to lose coordination. We fall more easily. We don't run our daily lives as smoothly as we did, and even simple things seem hard to do. Our brain and our eyes don't coordinate the way they did before the loss. We are prone to have more accidents. We get more colds. Our immune system is compromised, and we tire easily. All of that from grief. All of that from suffering with a loss. And Naomi has lost a spouse and both or all of her children. When Naomi comes back to Israel, when Naomi gets word that the famine is over, that a harvest is about to take place, she decides she's going to leave Moab. The 2 daughter-in-laws, Orpah and Ruth, don't want to stay in Moab anymore. They want to go with her. Even though born and raised, family in Moab, they want to go with Naomi back to her homeland. So they go with her. Naomi says, no, you don't need to do this. You're going to get in a bad way. You're just going to be a widow. There's not really any hope. I can't have any more kids. We can't marry you off with anyone. You don't need to come with me. So Orpah decides to go back. Ruth says, I'm not having it. I'm going where you are going. So there's probably tons and tons of mother-in-law jokes that could occur in here. But what I'm thinking is, how is it that someone like Naomi, a follower of the one true God, has gone to Moab and lived a life that is so significant and so different from what the Moabites were used to, and they want to come with her? Because when you look back through history, the Moabites and the Israelites, wartime, peacetime, wartime, peacetime, back and forth. The Moabites were polytheistic, believed in multiple gods, worshiped different things. Israelites, the one true God. Specific rules and laws that God laid out, expectations for what they were to do as his chosen people. And yet Ruth, as a Moabite, someone who completely different culture, completely different background, has watched Naomi live her life for maybe up to 10 years, depending on when they got married, and has decided, I want to go wherever Naomi is going. She has something different about her that I need to be a part of, and literally making the choice to go with a mother-in-law versus staying with her own family in her own land where she has a comfort level. Right before, we're going to pick up here in just a second in chapter 2, when Naomi comes back, the women of the village, this is what it says, the women exclaimed when they saw her, "Can this be Naomi?" So think back about those things we talked about with grief. She was so physically different after encountering 10 years of hard times that people didn't even really recognize her. Wait a minute, you're Naomi? You're the one that left 10 years ago? This is what you are, this is what you look like, this is what you sound like. And in fact, she asks that she's no longer referred to as Naomi, but that she's referred to as Mara, because she feels like she's gone through such hard times, she wants to change her name, that she is now somebody completely different. Let's pick up now in the story. So we're going to be in chapter 2, and we're going to read verses 5 through 12. So Ruth has now accompanied Naomi back, and we're going to pick up here in verse 5. Boaz asked the overseer of his harvesters, "Who does that young woman belong to?" The overseer replied, "She is the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters.' She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter." So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting, and follow along after the women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground, and she asked him, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." And so when I look at this part of the story and I think about Thanksgiving and I think about being thankful, my first takeaway from this story is when we are truly thankful, we are humbled. Because when I look right there at Ruth's response after hearing all the things that Boaz offered her, verse 10, at this, she bowed down with her face to the ground. So when we take the opportunity to be thankful for the blessings that we've received in our life, we have no other option but to be humbled at what God has given us, at what God has provided for us. So I tried to sit down and think about my 24-hour period in a generic week. And here's what happens. I get to wake up every morning and eat a meal, get clothes on, get in a car that has gas, drive to a job where I'm able to work in an area that I have strength and that I'm passionate about. I get to help other people. I then leave the job, come home to a family that is happy to receive me, eat another meal, be entertained via the family, via the TV, via whatever's going on, dance recitals, things like that. Go to bed on a nice mattress, have enough covers so that if it's cold outside, I can stay warm, have access to a fan and or air conditioner, so if it's too hot outside, I can stay cold, and then get up and do it again the next day. And it is a lot easier for me when I'm going, to spend my time concentrating on the teacher who didn't appreciate my support, or the student who wasn't paying attention to what I was trying to explain to them, or the traffic that I sat in trying to get home or trying to get to work. But it's when I slow down and when I stop and when I reflect on what appears to be things that I just glaze over that now I'm humbled by the fact that I have all these things. I'm thankful that there are not other obstacles or there are not things in my way that are preventing me or making it more difficult for me to do those types of things. So there are not a lot of times where I get out of bed and I'm thankful for my bed. There are not a lot of times where I'm going to work at 6:45 in the morning and I'm thankful for my work. But when I'm humbled, when I'm put in the right frame of mind with the blessings that I've received, it's at that point that I'm more open to receiving what Christ wants to show me and what God wants to remind me of and the blessings that I have that I so often skip over and forget about. I think the second thing that we see in this story is more about Naomi. So we're going to go back just a couple verses, right at the end of verse 2. Ruth is telling Naomi, I'm going to go out to the fields and I'm going to work. So Naomi, right at the end of verse 2, Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." 4 words. Go ahead, my daughter. Now, because I'm a little bit weird, I always think about like what this actually looked like. So I see Naomi sitting on a chair, passively participating in life, going through her grieving process, and I see Ruth saying, I got to support her. I got to do something. So you know what? I'm just going to go out to the fields and pick up the stuff that's left behind. And Naomi kind of just says, yeah, okay, it's a good plan. Go ahead, do that. And so Ruth goes out and she has that encounter with Boaz. And then if you skip down to the end of chapter 2, and we see Ruth comes home, verse 19. She comes home with 30 pounds of food, plus the leftovers from supper. So look at the contrast between Naomi, go ahead, my daughter, when she left and when Ruth comes back. Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you. Ruth says it was Boaz. Her response in verse 20, the Lord bless him. Look at those exclamation points. Look at the variation between Naomi when Ruth left and Naomi when she gets a physical picture. She can put her hands on some of the blessings that Ruth has received through Boaz and through God. Completely 180. Now, Naomi doesn't have anything. She doesn't have anything that she can share. She is completely, as a widow, dependent on other people. So all she has to share is her trust in God. All she has to share is her relationship with God. So all she can do is pray to God, is to ask God to bless somebody else. She doesn't have an excess where she can go and do that. And so that's exactly what she does. Bless the man who is able to provide this for you today. May the Lord bless him. So I think the second thing that we get is when we're thankful, we want to share with other people. When we're aware of our blessings, we want to help other people out. Because we're humbled first by what God has provided for us. We become aware of our excess. We become aware of all the amazing things we've got. And then we want to share it with other people. And even in the case with Naomi, when what we've got is not stuff, what we've got is a relationship with Christ, what we've got is a trust in God, that's something that we can share. That we can spend time praying for other people. We can spend time asking God to take his blessings and to share them with others, not just with ourselves. And so I see this change in Naomi as someone who is kind of passively going through life and going through the grieving process to someone who is actively now participating in life and wanting to bless others. My daughter Emily is 5, and there is no one more excited about giving and or getting presents than she is. So I realize there's like almost 7 billion people on the planet, so it's maybe a bit of a stretch, but no one is more excited than she is about getting or giving presents. And we've got videos and stuff of her getting birthday presents, and she'll open up the present and it'll be princess pajamas. And she'll pick it up and she'll go, "Princess pajamas, this is what I've always wanted." Hey, good job picking that out. You know, or she'll get, we got her a CD player because she likes these little Disney read-along books. A CD player! You knew I wanted a CD player! Yes. Apparently that's exactly what happened. We knew you wanted a CD player. And it's like the greatest gift that she's ever received. And she went to a birthday party yesterday. And so I was at home yesterday morning and she's like, "Dad, Grace is going to really like what I got her." I'm glad to hear that. It's stick-on faces, so you can choose the eyes and the nose and the mouth. That sounds awesome. And I made her a card. She's going to love the card because I used her favorite color, purple. I think that's a great idea. And I put the number 5 on the front because she's turning 5. That's the greatest card I've ever seen, Emily. I think that you did an awesome job. First thing she says to me when she gets back from the birthday party, "Grace loved my present. She opened it first." Wow, that's really significant apparently in the 5-year-old birthday party realm, is to be the one whose present is open first. But Aaron's birthday was a couple weeks ago, and we're going down the aisles at Target, and so I was trying to gear them towards getting Aladdin, because that's apparently the next Disney movie we need, and we passed Cinderella. Oh, Mommy would love Cinderella. She would, but that's not what we're here to get. I need to convince you that we are here to get Aladdin. So we go and we get Aladdin, and I'm ready to go, and she's like, "Are we going to go back and get Cinderella?" Yep, we are. We're going to go back and get Cinderella. And of course, she wants Mom to open her present first, and I'm not sure who was more excited, Emily giving Cinderella or Aaron getting Cinderella, but I think about, she is like effusively thankful and loving about stuff. And she's 5. And so I'm like, well, she's 5. She's a child. But then the Bible crops up, and I'm like, but we're told over and over again that we're the children of God, that we're just like kids, that God's going to take care of it. It's just our job to go out and love. It's just our job to go out and be thankful and do stuff for other people. And so when I look at, when we're thankful, it humbles us. It puts us in the right frame of mind. And then we want to take those blessings and we want to share them with other people. I think the last takeaway from this story is the process of gleaning. And I think that gleaning is significant because, as you can tell here, gleaning was not a high-profile position. People didn't aspire to be gleaners. I hope when I grow up, I can go pick up the stuff that's laying on the ground that nobody else gets. But there's probably multiple mentions, but there's 2 different mentions about gleaning that I want to draw your attention to. The first one is in Leviticus, and we're going to put it up here so you don't need to worry about flipping back and forth between it. But these were laws that God was giving to Moses. This is Leviticus 19, 9, and 10. When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. I am the Lord your God. And then there's a second one that is similar to it in Deuteronomy. The same context, God giving the laws. This is Deuteronomy 24, 19 through 22. When you are harvesting in your field and you overlook a sheaf, do not go back to get it. Leave it for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat the olives from your trees, do not go over the branches a second time. Leave what remains for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow. When you harvest the grapes in your vineyard, do not go over the vines again. Leave what remains for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt. That is why I command you to do this. And so we look at this society that God designed with his chosen people. Everyone was included. Everyone was taken care of. The foreigner, the fatherless, the widow. Regardless of your standing in society, if you were the landowner, you obviously had stuff to take care of you. But if you were not from Israel, if you were an orphan, or if you were a widow, you were dependent on other people. And so in God's society that he designed, foreigners are taken care of. Orphans are taken care of. Widows are taken care of. And so I look at the difference between charity and gleaning. And you're not going to run into many people who tell you you shouldn't participate in charity. You shouldn't give to people who have needs. But the big difference between charity and gleaning is in charity, you get to decide who gets your blessing. I agree with what they're doing. I'm going to give them some money. I agree with what they believe. I'm going to give them some of my extra stuff. In gleaning, people have no choice on who comes into their fields and is able to garner the benefit. And God doesn't care. The foreigner, the orphan, the widow, regardless of who you are, regardless of your standing in society, you're going to be taken care of. And so I look at this picture of Ruth as a Moabite. This polytheistic, warring with Israel's society, who was welcomed. And I look at the options that are presented to us today in 2015. And I wonder if we're open and willing to model our society after the one that God designed. And say, it's not up to me and charity. Because what God wants is for everyone to be included. And so when I think about Thursday afternoon, and I think about the turkey, and I think about the dressing, because we don't do stuffing in my house, it's going to be really difficult for me to humble myself and for me to want to share. But if I'm claiming to be a follower of Christ, if I'm standing up here on Sunday morning, my life is a witness. So what I have to do, because I know myself and my inability to do it on my own, is I have to make sure I'm connected. I have to make sure I'm spending time in prayer, that I'm spending time reading the scripture, that I'm spending time allowing God to guide my life and to guide my decisions, because it is then when I am most thankful. Let's pray.